Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 57 here at the tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. After something of a short absence, I have Raptor back here with me today.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
And, Raptor and I have been doing a lot of Sentai Origins here recently. We're trying to catch up with that before he ends up leaving for Japan, or...
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yeah, hopefully leaving for Japan.
Got my interview for the Jet program this month.
This month, yeah, it's already February. That's something.
Yeah, oh god.
But we wanted to go ahead and go back to more of a discussion thing, and Raptor actually came up with a great concept to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to him. I want Raptor to kind of explain the situation and what we're going to talk about, and then we'll discuss it. He also has a disclaimer here of what we're going to go ahead and talk about, and I will also make the point real quick that the Onyx Tavern is about analytical and mature discussions on topics. I know some people don't necessarily agree with that stance that I'm taking, but that's how this is going to go ahead and be with every other video I do. So, Raptor, I want you to just kind of take it away, and then I'll chime in when necessary.
Yeah, so two things led into this topic today. First and foremost, you've probably seen this on the news, but for those of you who haven't heard of it, there has been a firestorm of controversy over the Coca-Cola ad aired during the Super Bowl.
Which I want to stop you right there before we actually talk about what everything is. Because first, go Seahawks. I've been a Seahawks fan since 2002. Long suffering. So, okay, moving on.
It's their day has come.
Yes.
Yes. So, for those of you who haven't seen it, it is an ad of showing people from all over the world while America the Beautiful is being sang in 7 different languages.
Yeah, so basically it starts in English and then it goes like into Chinese and then Arabic and then a bunch of other languages. And it's a beautiful commercial. For somebody like me who's married to a Korean woman and I got this minor, I'm taking Japanese studies where I'm hanging out with Japanese people. And even at our school where we have like Indians and you've hung out with people, right?
Yeah, I work with an Indian, I hang out with Japanese people, I party with a Jamaican guy. It's great.
So for those of us, we look at the commercial like, oh, that's cool, an international commercial. Because also remember, Super Bowl's being shown around the world.
Exactly.
So this is a great way for Coke to sell their product.
Exactly.
Because Coke is, quote, American. So,
exactly.
But go ahead.
Right. And there's been a firestorm of controversy.
Yes.
There's been people accusing it of not being racist, because I would say the people hating it are racist. They're saying that it's,
Well, what's Twitter saying?
It's selling a divided America. It's apparently, according to these Twitter commenters, that it's promoting that immigrants shouldn't have to learn English when they come to America. In fact, Glenn Beck had said, "Why do you need to divide us politically? Because that's all this ad is. It's in your face, and if you don't like it, if you're offended by it, you're a racist. If you do like it, you're for immigration. You're for progress. That's all this is, to divide people." And there's been a lot of angry comments on Twitter and Facebook, and there's been a Facebook boycott launched.
Yeah, it's like people are boycotting Coke. The only reason I would boycott Coke is because I like Pepsi better.
Yeah, or there's too goddamn much sugar.
But overall, Raptor, what you're saying is that the first thing you got you thinking is this issue with Coke. And actually, let's tell everybody before you get to your second point what our topic actually is here.
So, our topic today is ethnocentrism in Super Sentai. The word ethnocentrism, if you don't know it, is overly focused or geared towards one culture or race or ethnicity.
Yes, and the way the Coke ad is that a lot of people who are against it would fall in that category, almost to where I think the term in Star Trek is xenophobia, which I think is
a Star Trek term.
Well, I think it is a real term, but that's like anytime you hear about that, like when Voyager run into a xenophobic race, or Worf would claim that the Klingons are xenophobic because Like the episode where they wouldn't accept Jadzia because she's Trill, and so she called Sorella xenophobic.
Exactly,
basically.
yeah.
So just unaccepting of other cultures. Now we're going to get to that's a blanket statement to be sure, but we're going to get to more specific things in regard to Sentai. Your second point specifically came from Sentai. It's really the convergence of these two different things in the same weekend, really, when you think about it.
Exactly. So, I haven't watched the episode yet, but in Kyoryuger episode 47, both Ramirez and Tessin leave the show and pass their powers on to...
Tessin passes on to his descendant. And
Ramirez passes on to Blue's sister?
Yes. I can't remember her name for the life of me. I think Yoko, something like that. Yeah, I haven't watched that episode yet, but that's what happens.
And here's the thing. Tessin's descendant is played by the same actor.
Yes.
So that guy's still working.
Exactly.
However, the one white guy in the history of Super Sentai, from Go Ranger until now, is shuffled out of the show and will not take part in the final battle against the DeBoss.
Well, we don't know exactly if that's going to go ahead and be the case, but basically Robert Baldwin is no longer Cyan. He's given that to somebody else. So, to your point, the one white guy in the show is written out at this point.
Exactly. And then he's shuffled into another Japanese person. Granted, there's one thing I like about that. It improves the gender ratios of the team.
And actually, I do like Blue's sister. I really like her story. And plus, it's the same girl that played Jasmine Deca Ranger.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yes. But to your point here, we can look at these two different events and actually kind of bring together what I wouldn't necessarily call an issue or problem with Super Sentai, but something that in a country like ours, where diversity is praised, at least those of us in the progressive movements, where diversity is praised, it doesn't seem to be praised as much in Japan.
Yes. And for starters, Japan is over 90% ethnically homogenous. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's mostly the ethnicity known as Yamato.
Okay.
There are people of Ainu descent that have generally mixed in with the rest of the country, but for the most part, it's Yamato Japanese people.
Yes.
And, however, let's look at Super Sentai.
Okay.
There have been over 200 Rangers at this point.
Yeah, 38 years now coming up, and over 200 heroes, and there's only one I can think about that is something other than something of Asian descent, other than Chinese or anything
so
like
there
that.
have been the occasional characters of Chinese descent. And yes, I know there have been several aliens over the years.
But that's a story thing. That's not an actual...
But the actors...
Yeah, it's not really a diversity. Scion from Time Ranger is still Japanese.
Exactly. And the Gokaigers. 5 of them are aliens, but...
The weird thing is space is full of Japanese.
Yeah. And the ancient world is full of Japanese. If you look towards King Ranger from...
Yeah, because he's like the oldest ever, and then he's like one of the first people or something. Is that his story?
Yes. He's from the Pangean society that the O-Rangers derive their power from.
Yeah. Now, let's clear up something right here. We understand that, again, we have a society in Japan that's 90% Japanese, okay, just to simplify things here. I think that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to simplify things here.
By all means.
And as far as producing-wise, in casting, if you're in Southern California, you can get an all-black cast. You can get an all-Hispanic cast. You can get an all-Asian cast. They do that for television shows. Look at Family Matters. I love that show, but it didn't take me till years later to really think about, this is an entire black cast, But in Tokyo, where that's where they film, it's probably much harder to find and all to get a television show with an all black cast or an all white cast.
Exactly.
So we can see where that fits in there. Okay, that you can have this problem of getting diverse races. That being said, however, if you were really trying to get diversity in your cast in Japan, you could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure there are actors in the United States, New Zealand, wherever, that would be willing to go to Japan for a year and film a show.
Yes. So, before the final casting of Kyoryuger was revealed, it was rumored that Green would be played by a white guy. He's American, living in Japan, who's made a living for himself as both an actor and a model. His name was Nicholas Edwards, I believe, although I could very much be wrong, and if I am, I apologize. But, in the end, a Japanese guy.
Yeah, and you know, I like the character that they have, but you could easily do that with a white guy, and it could be the same story. And I will bring this up right there, I don't know if you know this, but in the Beetleborg's Japanese source material, the Metal Hero series, when the Metallic series that was based off of, the character of Dragonborg was actually played by a white guy.
Oh, so yeah, Toei has
blonde hair, blue eyes. He was designated as American, and we have seen in the Sentai series prior to Kyoryuger, if those of you remember the episode Lost and Found in Translation from Dino Thunder, they had an American guest character on the show within the show who was African American. He was black, and Willie Whacker.
And there was an episode of Abba Ranger in which Yellow got launched into the air, high into the stratosphere by a monster. I forget what it was. And she landed in Australia.
Oh, okay.
And she lands on a beach in front of this perplexed older woman who was white. And although strangely enough, she didn't speak with an Australian accent. She sounded like she was from America. And maybe she was a tourist.
And then there was...
And so Yellow had to apologize in English.
And then there was the episode where, in Geiki Ranger, the Christmas episode, where Geiki Chopper runs into an Australian boy, and he's like, I hate Christmas, I hate Christmas. And of course he can't understand him. So he's like, he loves Christmas. And then, you know, you have the father. I mean, the point we're getting at here, I think we're kind of losing the topic a little bit. But let's kind of hone this back in. The idea that we're trying to go ahead and talk about is that we have a country that has a very high population of its own people. But a lot of what we're getting in Sentai is focusing only on the Japanese culture. And I know it's an advent of the culture, but it's not really kind of branching out for any type of diversity.
Yeah, so let's consider attempts at diversity in Super Sentai. Let's harken back to Jacka. No, it wasn't Jacka. It was...
Battle Fever J?
Battle Fever J, yes. Miss America was played by... Well, she was an American actress.
Yeah.
She was half Japanese. However, she was still someone who looked Japanese.
Yeah.
I mean, other than her facial features resembling Caucasians, you probably wouldn't have guessed that she...
Yeah, I didn't know that until I actually watched the episode and they explained her backstory, and then we did research on the actress.
Exactly. And several Sentai characters have it in their backstory that they spent time in America.
Not Bao Kenya. I'm trying to think of another character who spent time in America.
Didn't Amy spend time in America in Kyoryuger?
Her parents are in America.
Yeah, so and I think she spent time there as well.
Maybe I'd have to go back and check that episode.
Right, she has roots in America. However, she's played by a Japanese actress.
Yeah, and you know, there's nothing wrong with the Japanese actress. It's just that okay, let's go as far back as Battle Fever J.
Okay.
Actually, let's make this comparison real quick. Let's look at Captain Planet for a minute.
All right.
African, Soviet Union, later Russia, Asian, American, South American. That was our diversity because they were talking about trying to save the world to bring people from different parts of the world
together, because saving the world is a global effort.
Exactly. Now, recall back to the original Sentai shows. They are part of international organizations.
Yes.
I think Go Ranger was definitely part of international. I think Jacka was too.
Yes.
And I think Battle Fever J, they were working with the CIA or the FBI. But the point is, it was a global threat, but the only people they bring together are Japanese citizens.
Yeah, and then let's look at all the Sentai series after that. There are these powerful world-ending threats. Because in Go Ranger, the villains were only focused on taking Japan.
Yeah.
They had plans to spread to the rest of the world after they took Japan, but they were focused on Japan.
Yeah.
Same thing with Jacka. Same thing with Battle Fever J. However, look at other series where it's made very clear that the villains have their eyes set on the entire Earth.
Yeah.
The Zangiak nearly took over Earth were it not for the intervention of the Sentai teams.
Exactly. And then even Witch Pandora, she's just trying to kill all humans, basically, at that point.
And she caused global cataclysm in the past.
Exactly. And even, I think it was it Goggle 5?
Yeah.
They went to Germany in the first episode. That's kind of where the threat originated, was in Germany.
And look at the first episode of Kyoryuger. There were scenes of destruction all over the world.
Exactly. But it's odd that when the world is a threat, only 5 people from one country could save it. Now, Power Rangers is guilty of this too, as far as Americans can save the world, or New Zealanders, depending on how you want to look at it, can go ahead and save the world. But the thing they did is that it's like what George Takei would always say about the original Star Trek, is that the Enterprise was Starship Earth. And that each race was represented somehow, or each culture was represented.
Right. And George Takei said that he never minded that Sulu was not a Japanese name, because he felt that Sulu was a stand-in for the East Asian races in general.
And that's why in the J.J. Abrams films, Sulu's played by a Korean actor and not a Japanese actor, which George Takei kind of signed off on. It's like, as long as he's Asian.
Yeah,
exactly. Pretty much his thing.
And so, this is what the core question of this discussion is. Why can there not be a Sentai actor or character of something, of a race or culture other than Japan? I'm not saying it has to be an American guy.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, I don't get it either. It really kind of befuddles me because we make it such an effort. Now, America is very unique on the world scale because we are that melting pot. Let's be completely honest about that.
And Power Rangers really reflects that.
Yeah, but let's also talk a little bit about film history. From what I have gathered, and you can say if I'm wrong on this, but this is just what I've heard, is that most productions could have an all-white cast if they wanted. In TV shows, movies, and all that. But there are some civil liberties, ACLU issues, and all this that says we need to have the term is token black character.
The ACLU probably wouldn't raise a stink, but there are racial groups that would probably object, and really it gets bad buzz to have an all-white cast.
Yeah, because, okay, let's assume you did the first season of Power Rangers all-white. No Trini, no Zach. They're replaced by white actors and actresses, okay? And it became a global phenomenon at that point. Like, everybody knew what Power Ranger was. But how much pushback would you get if it was all-white cast?
Yeah, and especially if it continued like it did. Say you went from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers to In Space with just an all-white cast. There would have been some controversy.
Exactly. Now, we can debate whether that's, warranted or not, because it's all about story when you get to it. And the thing is, I guess in my mind, is that it doesn't matter to me if Zach was black or not. As long as it was Zach. As long as you had the character into it. But if you want to make him black, that's fine. If you want to make him Indian, that's fine. If you want to make him Asian, whatever. you don't have to put him in a box being the Black Ranger or being a Black Ranger, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, of course. Everyone's watched Zordon as a racist.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess what I'm getting to is I don't mind if it was an all-white cast, but I appreciate that it was a mixed cast.
Yes. So, this is where I disagree with you.
Okay.
I believe that casting and aesthetic is very important. I was at a conference for my job a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I went to California, and it was a conference about college programming events.
Okay.
I attended a workshop about diversity. It was led by a Chinese American guy.
Okay.
He was of Chinese ancestry. Both of his parents were Chinese, but he had spent his entire life in America.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about how growing up, watching TV,
mm-hmm.
he never felt like there was anyone that was like him that he could look up to. I mean, think about it. Prior to the 80s and 90s, there really weren't a lot of people of other races in cartoons or comic books.
And if it was in cartoons, it was like Charlie Chan and the Chan clan and very offensive.
And I wouldn't really argue that tide started turning until the X-Men introduced the all-new lineup. Because when X-Men started, it was a bunch of white people.
Yeah, because you had Beast and Iceman and all that. And that's true of just about anything Marvel did in the 60s.
Right. But when the all-new X-Men came out, you had Storm, who was from South Africa.
Yeah.
Nightcrawler, who was from Germany.
Wolverine, who's Canadian, you know.
Yeah. So that's when you started providing people of different races someone to look up to. Someone that they can... idolize.
I guess you're making me sound bad here and all that, but I guess
I'm not trying to.
I know, and I'm probably making myself sound bad and all that, but I guess the point I'm getting to now, it's hard from our perspective because we're both white Americans from the South.
Right. We've talked a lot about Power Rangers at this point, but we need the original idea here was to talk about Sentai, and we talked about this in our LGBT Power Rangers podcast.
Yeah,
that kids take lessons away from whatever they watch.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of you saying it's just a kid's show, there's not supposed to be anything deeper. Kids learn from what they watch.
And I absolutely agree with that because, again, that's the crux of most of my arguments that I make.
Exactly. And that's why I think kids need to have good messages coming towards them. They don't need to be ham-fisted things because it gets a little overdone to say believe in yourself or protect the environment. But there are plenty of good messages that kids can take away from, say, the early seasons of Power Rangers.
Yeah, and I will say this. Actually, this might be just a very weird thing to go ahead and bring up, but I think the reason I'm probably married to a Korean woman is because of Trini. Because when everybody was out liking Kimberly, I like Trini. So that's like kind of a weird thing to go ahead and say. But I've met, black people who say, oh, I love Zack. He was my favorite character. And they didn't care that he was the Black Ranger. They just it was Zack. He was a Power Ranger,
Exactly.
It can be a representation of either the culture or projecting yourself into the character.
Now let's twist this to Sentai. What is the subconscious message? I'm not saying this is a deliberate attempt by Toei to promote nationalism and ethnocentrism.
I don't even think it's intentional. I think that's just
it's
the
just
way
how
that
it is.
It's just how it is, and they're not really working towards that. I mean, now Robert Baldwin, who plays Ramirez, has been in a couple of other Japanese television shows. I think he's been in some dramas. I think he was in Kamen Rider at one point. I could be mistaken on that, but he's always played a secondary B cast or cameo appearance, something like that.
Yeah, and all of these characters that you brought up in Sentai who were not Japanese, they played bit parts.
Yeah, except for maybe the Dragonborn guy, but
right.
I don't know. I don't
that was
know
a
much
regular
about that.
Cast guy.
Yeah.
But the Kid and Geki Ranger that you mentioned.
Yeah, one episode.
And then Shinken Brown.
Oh, yeah, which I love that story. Richard Brown was awesome.
Yeah, but he was a one-episode guy. He he didn't become a regular character.
Exactly.
Most certainly didn't become a legitimate ranger.
Yeah, definitely. There is no Shinken Brown.
Exactly.
But you know, I think this is what I'm going to go ahead and say about that is like the resources are there. They're just not looking for it because I don't think it's something that bothers them. Because I want to go back to what I was trying to make in my previous comment, is that you have to have, and again, the term is out there, the token black guy or the token black kid. That's why you have that character in South Park. His name is Token.
Yeah, exactly.
They have to have one of them there. And I feel that when you have television shows, they in America, they want you to have that character in there. But in Japan, there's nobody calling out saying we need diversity. There is no group that I'm aware of that's saying we need to have a white character and we need to have a black character. We need to have some sort of diversity.
There would probably be groups in Japan who would complain if a character of a white character or a black character, or even say a Hispanic or anything other than East Asian character was portrayed in an overly negative light. There would probably be people who would complain, but for the most part, yeah, there is nothing like that.
And I think that's simply what it is. Because, you know, it seems like it's a complex issue, but I just really think that there's a simple answer to it to where they just
let's also look at the fact that the Japanese government actually does work to sort of import diversity. The JET program.
Yeah, exactly.
And for those of you who don't know what it is a program in which English speakers from English-speaking countries such as the United States, England, Australia are flown to Japan to live and work in communities and help teach English at schools. And that's sort of important diversity because all of a sudden you've placed in these towns where a lot of people have probably never seen a white guy. Mm-hmm. They've suddenly put in an English-speaking American.
Yeah.
Or Australian person. Or an English person. And I don't know if you'll actually watch this when you take the Japanese pop culture class next year. There is a documentary called The Japanese Version. It's actually a bit of a controversial thing among academics, but it's about the Japanese fascination with American culture or just culture from other places.
Well, I mean, they've been like that since the Meiji period. Once, President Fillmore said, open up your borders or else, It's been that way for, 200 years ago or something like that?
Yeah, and if you look at a lot of Japanese advertisements, whether it be print or commercial advertisements, they feature white people.
Well, I've seen commercials with Jeff Goldblum advertising Duracell in Japan.
Look at Sentai itself. Look at how many English words get used.
All the colors, definitely.
All the color names for attacks, names for mechas, names for weapons. Mm-hmm. Such as the
Highway Buster.
Exactly. But it's Buster in general. Or Time Ranger. Just Ranger in general.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got time, which is an English word. Then the next season, you got Gao, which is a Japanese word.
Japanese onomatopoeia with an English word, Ranger.
Yeah. But there is a cross-cultural fascination because we could say the same thing here in the United States.
With the fascination, this is where the question comes up. Why can't there be a ranger of a different race, a different nationality? Why can't, say, someone who's working abroad, they don't even have to be an English teacher, maybe they're just a business person or a journalist. Why can't they become a ranger?
See, this is where I would love to be able to talk to a Sentai fan living in Japan to better understand the culture. Because, we're learning about the history of the culture, but we don't know what it's like in present day. And I hesitate to really give an actual definitive answer. I can only speculate on things. And just my speculation is it's probably not as important to them as maybe some other issues that they're going with. Because, of course, again, they have issues with Korea. So maybe getting over the hurdle of Korean acceptance, Koreans living in the country, is more of an issue to them than putting white
that
people
issue is more in their face. Because
exactly. It's because it would be the same thing if you looked at us in the 1950s, 1960s about putting black people on television at that point, because that was something that was facing our country with civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were saying at that time, we need to get Japanese people on television, it's not as big of an issue.
Didn't really deal with that until Star Trek.
Well, absolutely, 1966. But it wasn't, again, as hot button a topic issue. And I almost wonder if that's what it is that they have other cultural and racial issues going on, that putting white characters in television show, whether it be Sentai or anything else, just isn't that big of an issue to people, as opposed to, say, have a Japanese movie with a Korean lead actress.
Yeah, so, and this may get complaints leveled at me of complaining about nothing, complaining about a show aimed at kids in another country.
But the thing is that it's going to be important at some point, and the fact is, whether they believe we're part of the demographics or not, we watch it and we enjoy it, and that's as much as they want out of it, is the people who enjoy the show. And we enjoy it, and that's something, again, from our American perspective, because we look at the Coca-Cola ad, and we're like, yes, that's how it is.
Let's look at the acknowledgement of the Sentai fans.
Yeah.
Even though there haven't been a lot of them, look at the releases of Shinkano and Go Say Great. The Japanese toys being released in American Toys R Us.
Yeah, now of course everybody knows about how I am with Bandai and everything, but part of that issue, I think, is simply, one, it is in Japanese packaging, so that's a little like, I have no idea what this is, basically, unless the kid says, that's the Samurai Megazord and all that. But explain to me exactly what you mean.
What I'm saying is that Bandai, one of the head honchos and major creative force on Sentai, whether you acknowledge it or not, acknowledge their American fans. And
I see what you mean.
Yeah, and imported a toy. Their toys, not our Power Ranger toys.
Exactly. Now, again, I have issues with the release, even though I do appreciate it. I just have issues with the way they released it and everything. So there is acknowledgement. And the thing is, in Japan, we've exported tons of stuff to Japan and all that. Yeah, they're obsessed with Hello Kitty and all that stuff, but I guarantee you there's a big following of Harry Potter fans, although that's British anyway, but you get my point.
Yeah, well, it's, European in origin, basically. Cause
oh, yeah.
If you look at a lot, you can attribute white culture to European stuff.
I think ultimately what needs to be said in this conversation, Raptor, is that multicultural diversity still has a way to go in both our country and in Japan. The Coca-Cola ad is a great example of how far we have to go in this country. And Ramirez, after 37 years being the first white ranger, also means they have a long way to go as well. But the important thing is that we're getting there, and we are at least acknowledging it. And I'm hoping that our fans and listeners out there are acknowledging it too, because that's ultimately what we want to do. Acknowledge it and think about it. Now, I'm not saying we have to go protest Toei and say, hey, you got to have more white characters in there.
Or, a black character or something.
Yeah, we don't have to go ahead and do that. But if it's brought up in the public consciousness, then people are going to start being more aware of it. And when trends change, when companies are aware of the awareness of other people, then that's when progress is made.
Right, because I feel that would send a message to, if, say... Let's just say the 6th Ranger of Tokyo is a black guy. Okay. And
hopefully it's not Tokyo Black. Yeah.
That it would send the message to kids that, these foreign people are good people too. They can be friends. They can be trusted. And that contributes to a better overall international climate.
Absolutely.
It promotes acceptance, cooperation, diversity. It humanizes the other.
And I completely agree there. Raptor, I think we're going to have to go ahead and table this discussion because ultimately...
Yeah, ultimately
it's a really difficult thing to talk about simply because what bothers us and what bothers other people are going to be different, and what we notice and what we don't notice is going to be different from other people as well. So I'm just hoping that we didn't necessarily offend anybody out there, because I don't think we have any negative opinions on racism or culturalism or anything of that regard, but we just want to bring up the fact that it is bothersome giving basically these two separate events, the Coca-Cola and Ramirez passing on his powers, happened within the same weekend, that it's almost something we have to really look at and go, well, wait a second here.
Exactly.
But, maybe we'll do a follow-up one day, and I'm really curious to know what our fans think about all this.
Yeah.
Because, you know what? I want to give a shout to the Onyx Tavern fans, because there are some fans out there that are very negative about the videos and the things that we discuss. Most of them are not subscribers. But for the majority of our subscribers, they're very open-minded, and I love the comments that we get.
Exactly.
And I'm really curious as to what they have to say here, because I just want to see... I want to see some good things from our comment section. So
I also enjoy the people who liked us on Facebook.
Oh, absolutely. Which, by the way, I need at least one more like on there so I can start getting analytics about my likes on Facebook. So somebody please like the Facebook page so I can start getting analytics.
We'll put a link to it.
Link's always at the end of the videos now. So follow that link to the Onyx Tavern at Facebook, and we can always continue the conversation there.
Exactly.
So again, just let us know what you guys think. You guys have a good evening. Oh, and thank you for joining us, Raptor.
Oh, of course. Always good to be here.
Absolutely. Have a good night, and the tavern is now closed.